just the basic question, why aren't they using these treatments?
Right, and you just heard about how difficult it is to get vaccines out and get enough doses, and then you hear about all of these doses of a treatment, one of the few treatments that's actually approved for COVID-19 just sitting on the shelf, and it really is confounding. A couple of things going on. One, this is really for people with mild to moderate symptoms. So to get this treatment before they actually show these more severe treatments, it has to be given in the first 10 days after a positive test. And so that's one of the difficulties. And that has to be given in a clinical setting. So to people in an infusion into their arm, into their vein, in a hospital type setting or in a doctor's office. And frankly, a lot of people just don't know about it. And they're being told you really need to ask for this. Ask your primary care doctor as soon as you're diagnosed, as soon as you get that positive test. And if you qualify, then you can get it.
These are the same antibody drugs, if they sound familiar to people, that former President Trump took when he got COVID. How do they specifically work, and who is eligible for them?
Right, and remember, President Trump, former President Trump at the time, called it a cure. Now, doctors aren't going that far, but it's a synthetic drug. It works like your body's own antibodies against COVID-19, and so you're giving it, and then your body's able to fight off the virus. So who's eligible? And this is done under an FDA emergency use authorization. And so the people that are eligible are those that are at higher risk of developing a more severe reaction to COVID-19. So those that are over 65 and with underlying conditions. And again, only those with mild to moderate symptoms before they're hospitalized. And the point is that this treatment may prevent them from having to be hospitalized, which would be huge for the healthcare system that's just overwhelmed right now. Think about it. If you didn't have that many people actually having to be hospitalized with this, it would really make a huge difference in fighting the pandemic.
Right, so we know they can make a difference. We know health officials on both the federal and state levels want these antibodies to be used more widely. What do they need to do to make that happen? How do they get barriers out of the way? How do we change this from being a story about being sitting on the shelf to treatments being used?
Right. So a big part of it is awareness. If people know, if their providers know, that will make a huge difference. And then it's just the logistics. Because this has to be given in a clinical setting, you need to have these infusion centers set up. You need to be able to get it at your doctor's office, maybe. So it's just the logistics of being able to get this to people. Think about it. They're going to be COVID positive people. So it has to be done very carefully so you're not putting more people at risk. But it is just getting the logistics, getting the infusion centers set up, and getting these doses out to people because doctors are saying, my patient needs this, I'm prescribing it, let's get it. And I talked to a patient who said within 3 days of getting this, she was running again. She felt so much better. It really helped her. I know of another doctor whose parents were positive, and she made the call to Eli Lilly herself and said, I want this for my parents. And she really thinks that she may have saved their lives. They weren't yet seeing severe symptoms. They got this. It didn't get any worse.
Wow, it could really make a difference. Well, thank you so much, Kristen, for coming on and letting our viewers know about it. Hopefully, if they know people who might need a treatment like this, they now know what to do.
Absolutely. Take care.
The European Union may cut off travel to and from the UK to try and contain that highly contagious coronavirus strain. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engels in London with more on that plan.
Alison, I hate to say it, while many Americans were dealing with the political turmoil, the assault on the Capitol, the transition of power, which was not until the very last minute peaceful, the rest of the world has been dealing with these horrible variants. Here in the UK, it is the only story. The UK variant, which is dominant here, which is highly contagious, has put death rates at nearly double what they were during last year's peak. This country is talking about imposing even more lockdowns, extending lockdowns even further. They're considering perhaps totally cut off this country, banning international travel, sure they have any idea how many variants are out there, because frankly, they're not that easy to find. You need to do complex genetic testing. You need to sequence the virus. That takes expertise. It takes very expensive equipment. It takes correct laboratories. It is not a simple swab or blood test. So most of the world isn't sequencing, isn't checking for variants, and doesn't know what the variants circulating in their own countries may be. But we are learning a little bit more about some of these variants, and what we're learning is troubling. The South African variant, which is no longer just in South Africa, according to the inventor of the scientist who discovered the variant, and a recent study, may be able to reinfect people. That is, once you catch COVID, you develop antibodies, but this variant has evolved in such a way that it can get around those antibodies and reinfect people. And the concern is, if it can get around antibodies and reinfect people, it could also be resistant to the current vaccines right now, raising a whole host of questions about, do these vaccines need to be updated? How can this be? So these variants are a massive problem, a growing problem. On a practical level, here in the UK, this variant has shut down life as we know it here and sent death tolls really through the roof. Allison.
Joining me now, Dr. Matthew Schlatter-Schweder-Davis, infectious disease physician at the Washington University School of Medicine and the Johns Hopkins VA Medical Center. Dr. Davis, we always love seeing you, especially on a Friday. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson today saying something pretty scary. There is evidence that UK variant could be deadlier. It is already here in the US. If this is, in fact, a more deadly strain of COVID, what do we need to do?
Well, thankfully, the new administration has already shown that they want to be aggressive about dealing with the coronavirus moving forward. They want to show consistent leadership, which is what we've been looking for. They want consistent messaging. And they want to help states to get ahead of this because, quite frankly, many states, most states have been struggling. While this may sound concerning, what we do know is that researchers at Walter Reed at Pfizer and Moderna did do research on the UK strain, and all data thus far shows that the vaccines that are out right now from both Pfizer and Moderna are effective against this strain. So until we know more, I think it's important for the public to stay calm and continue to do what we've been asking. The vaccine being the most important tool in our toolbox is still social distance, still wear masks, and still avoid large gatherings or washing hands.
Dr. Davis, President Biden's plan to combat the pandemic includes 100 million vaccines in 100 days. That is really ambitious. Is it achievable?
You know, it is. And I think the most important part is that it's needed. As you know, vaccine rollout at the beginning of this was woefully inadequate. We are seeing too few people take the vaccine even when it's available to them, especially in Black and Brown communities. This is something I've been talking to you about for months. We knew this was coming. We knew that there was high degrees of vaccine hesitancy within these communities. So to see an administration that has brought back science to the fore, to the lead, to see Dr. Fauci back at the helm, to also see someone who is leading the task force in Dr. Nunez as far as equity goes, it's very important because we're not going to get these numbers any better if we don't do a better job of really meeting people where they are and quelling their fears around these vaccines.
Dr. Davis, we keep hearing stories of vaccination appointment issues. Here in New York, I've personally seen my parents who are senior citizens and will kill me for describing them as such, have their appointments canceled. It took forever to even get those appointments. I've heard stories of people showing up for appointments at hospitals in New York City and they are turned away because the shots are already gone. What is your advice for people in these situations? What should they do? And then what about people who may have gotten their first shot and are now worried they're not going to be able to get their second?
I think the most important message is stay calm. Do not panic.
Yeah.
States are doing the best they can. Up till now, it has been a struggle for them to get the support they need. President Biden told us that he is now going to apply funding and apply practical help to get states what they need. We need, I as someone who's on the board of health in my city, for example, we need to continue to apply pressure, positive pressure, as we will. However, in the meantime, the public needs to do what they can. If you have a vaccine list that you can sign up for, do it. If it's enough provided to check up, do that. If you get there on the day and things are running behind, show a little grace. Everybody is doing the best they can. We are at a year now of dealing with this. And the folks that are doing this work are doing it diligently. So just continue to be patient, have hope. Vaccines are here. We will get to everyone. And even if you are delayed, just take a deep breath and get back on the list and you will get your vaccine.
Dr. Davis reminding us all to keep calm. We will get our vaccines. Thank you so much and have a wonderful weekend.
You too, Allison. So great to see you.
I'll see you soon. If you're getting on a plane, a train, or a bus, you need to bring a mask. President Biden is signing a new executive order requiring masks for interstate travel. Starting Tuesday, anyone coming into the country has to get a negative COVID test result within 3 days of their trip and then self-quarantine. NBC News foreign correspondent Molly Hunter has more from London. Hey, Allison, hello from a very quiet Heathrow Airport. Like we're just up on the main runway. Normally planes whipping by. Not a lot of planes taking off at all, and certainly not a lot of planes taking off to the U.S. So this new executive order that President Biden has signed now requires a negative PCR test 72 hours before flying and then quarantine or self-isolation upon arrival. As far as reaction here, it really only applies to the people, of course, who can fly to the U.S., like me, an American living in the UK, because right now, British citizens, Europeans are not allowed into the U.S. at all. So you can't even board flights with a negative COVID test or without. Now, the UK has a similar policy in place to get into the UK at all from anywhere. You have to also show a negative PCR test 72 hours before, and then once you arrive, you have to quarantine for 10 days. Now, the way they've been enforcing it here, Allison, you land, you fill out something called a passenger locator form. So you provide your address, your contact information, your email, maybe your boyfriend or your sister or your roommate's contact information, something so they can track you down. The government has gotten much more rigorous at spot checking, essentially calling you, texting you, showing up at your door to make sure you're self-isolating, and then asking for that proof of a negative PCR test. And what the government is doing, if you are not following the rules, they're fining you big fines for breaking self-isolation. And if you can't actually furnish that negative PCR test, the fine right now is £500. That's almost $700, Allison.
The executive orders the president is issuing today related to the economy and underline their impact on American families and workers. Brian is